Thanks. Hi, everybody. Wow, it's like a quiet crowd today. So I got some cool slides. They do like cool things. So my name's Clint Savage. If you don't know who I am, people online just call me Herlo. So if you have, or in real life they call me Herlo too. So feel free to do so. I work at the Linux Foundation, and I've been working there for a little over a year and a half. And when I started there, we worked on collaborative projects. Collaborative projects is not the kernel and not linuxfoundation.org, but pretty much anything else. And we actually have customers who buy space with us and host their Git infrastructure or their website or whatever things that they want to host. Specifically about the kernel, our biggest customer is one called Code Aurora Forum. Code Aurora is basically Qualcomm and their innovation center and a bunch of external companies that got together and build Android components for the kernel and other Linux components that are similar. We have somewhere in the range of, I think it's about 3,000 Git trees that we host for them. So it's a very big project, and we've been trying to do some interesting stuff with it. So FreeIPA has actually come out of that as a way to manage identity for a lot of our users. Now, we don't use FreeIPA specifically for that, but we do actually use FreeIPA for identifying like our administrators and a few of our customers. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. For those of you who don't know who I am, I started this conference back in 2007. So it was called the Utah Open Source Conference back then. And it's been going great for about 7 years now, apparently, and it's sold out this year, and I'm kind of like surprised and humbled, and it's kind of cool. It's neat to see all these people show up. So welcome, thanks for coming, and I'm excited you're here, and hopefully I can, stand up to everybody else's presentations and show you some cool stuff. So beyond all of that, I like beer, okay? Especially IPAs. And so throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about IPA and FreeIPA, right? So later on, there'll be some pictures and some fun stuff, and if you have questions about them or you want to look at the URLs, there's plenty of those there. I didn't do enough research because I ran out of time, but essentially I was going to do this nice little presentation about how IPAs came to be. And so I know a little bit about it. I know a little bit about the brewing process, and I've been working on getting my own brew set up, but IPAs are harder than the others for lots of reasons. So my favorite beer, or IPA anyway, is the Red Chair. Anybody ever had this before? And most of you are probably LDS here, so if you're not, it's okay. Oh, Bear's had Red Chair, because he's probably been to my house.
Actually, it was at the break.
Oh, at the break. They used to have it there. So it's a really nice IPA. It's a little bit hoppy, and that's one of the things that identifies IPAs. Now, they call it a Northwest Pale Ale, but it's essentially an IPA brewed with their water and their ingredients, and so they branded a Northwestern IPA, but it's essentially an IPA. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about IPA, and then I'm going to talk about IPA. So, how many of you guys came for the talk about identity management and what you're trying to figure out? Like, how many of you use AD in some fashion or form? Okay. Are you customers of it, or are you like mostly server admins, and how many of you hate it? Okay, good. Yeah. So good for you. You hate it, and you haven't used it in years. Good plan. So we're going to try to talk about how FreeIPA can actually free you from AD in a few ways. First off, to start with, FreeIPA actually has, and I think it's since 3.0, an ability to integrate with Active Directory. So you can synchronize directly with it.
When you say synchronize, you mean I can create users on Active Directory that will automatically be able to be used with FreeIPA?
Yeah, so the question was, if I create users on Active Directory, they can just be used in FreeIPA. Yeah, it replicates just the same. Okay. So you can actually set up replicas in FreeIPA, same way you can in Active Directory, and they'll all talk to each other friendly. So there's a few little tweaks you have to do specifically for AD, but yeah. Forgive me, I'm under an allergy attack or something, and I've got a sore throat. So I'm not talking as loud as I normally would. So why do we want to do this, right? Because, well, everything that's in this stack is open source, right? We want to open source all the things. So this is the big thing for me, is like, I don't really want to use Active Directory, but if I have to, I can integrate with it. And I can now start using open source tools to do so. And eventually, hopefully, if you're smart about it, you'll get rid of Active Directory and start using IPA. Now, if you're a Red Hat customer or an Oracle customer or something like that, they call it identity management or IDM. You may have heard of this before. It's the same thing. FreeIPA is available in Fedora. It's open and available in CentOS. It's available in anything, and you can download it and install it on any distro. Should just work. So what are the components of it? First off, 389 directory server. This is the standard LDAP server that you'll find. You might see OpenLDAP. It's very similar. It has a few extra pieces to it. Not anything that you'll be really surprised by. So 389DS is nice. We have our own certificate system. So we manage CAs with dog tag. We manage an Apache HTTP server. Well, imagine that, because we have to actually have a way to, do things. And I'll show that off in just a minute. Bind, if you want to do DNS management, you can do it with IPA. How many of you guys have heard of SSSD? Okay, good. How many of you hate it? Okay, you're wrong. System Security Services daemon is actually pretty awesome. In older versions of Linux, it was pretty horrible. And it had some features that weren't very useful. And later on, I'm actually going to show you guys how to do Sudo SSH with SSSD using FreeIPA. And so we'll show you how that authentication mechanism works and how you can authenticate everything. And it really isn't that hard. How many of you guys used Kerberos before? Okay, if you're managing systems in general, Kerberos is a good solution. If you have a client and you want to use web browsers this way, it's probably not the solution you want. There are many other ways inside of IPA to do authentication. There's certificates. You can do Kerberos certificates with, like your master server and your clients if you want. But I wouldn't do it for anybody but your admins if you're going to do an authentication otherwise. And that's what we do at the Linux Foundation. So to kind of glue this all together, we have an API. We have some back-end pieces and then the IPA lib plugins and whatnot. The UI is probably the most interesting with the UI here and the CLI. Those are the two most important parts, if you ask me. I use the CLI quite heavily, and I use the UI sparingly, I guess. I use it quite a bit. Here's my next beer. So the Hopulent IPA from Epic. This is probably my favorite beer in the local area. If you guys are not familiar with the Epic Brewery, it's 8th South and State, I think. And they have a little area in there you can try the beer and whatnot. And they have a little cafeteria, so if you just want to go get a snack, smell the beer, that's fine too. But it's a great IPA. If I don't have Red Chair available at home, I'll drink this. So we need to talk about some terminology before we get into the demos. How many of you guys are familiar with the three letters IP and A and what they mean? A few. Okay, so we're going to talk about each of them, right? So each of these are associated with a beer, like this one's Trader IPA from Uinta. So this is directly from the FreeIPA website. Essentially, identity is saying, hey, you're you, right? I can do that with an RPC server. I can do single sign-on. I can do CLI management, whatever it is. I want to be able to make it so you can centrally authenticate yourself and identify who you are, right? Now, that doesn't mean you're authorized. That just means you're authenticated. Next one, policy. So Hodgson's Ale, by the way, is actually called October Ale, was one of the very first India Pale Ales ever shipped from England to India. Not Ireland. That'd be a different one. That's like Guinness or something. So in this case, we're going to define Kerberos or Sudo or SE-Linux or SSH rules that allow you to limit what access individuals have or groups or whatnot. So this is our authorization section, right? We're setting a policy and saying what's what. Finally, auditing. I forgot the name of this one. Oh, Great Divide. I've only ever had this one once. I want to try it again. It's a double IPA. Double IPAs are very, very hoppy, and they're very strong. And if you've ever seen the commercials with the bitter beer face, that's what it does on the first one. Here's where we talk about how we can create mutual trust, and this is how we do that with Active Directory. I'm not going to show that today, just so everyone knows. It's too long of a demo. I bet it takes like 3 weeks to get Active Directory to cooperate. Oh, did I say that out loud? Sorry. So we can also do it with other identity management systems. If you're using CAS or Shibboleth or something else, you might be interested in that integration as well, and they do have tools for that. So if you guys have ever used any of those as well. Any questions so far? It's pretty basic stuff, but it doesn't need to be gone over. So the next question is IPA for you, right? And I think the answer to that question is pretty obvious, but here's some questions you can ask yourself. I'm not going to go through them all. Do you use NTP? Do you use LDAP? Do you use SSL? Do you use certificate management? Do you use SSH? Do you have 7 or more administrators? Machines. Two administrators, whatever. Do you hate AD, right? And probably the answer is yes, right? Here's the next beer. This one's one of my other favorites, Hop Rising. It's a local beer also from Squatters downtown. How many of you guys know where the Squatters is? Okay, good. That means the beer drinkers in the room. Sweet. Unless you're under 21.
I'm not.
Sweet. Let me see your ID.
Piles of Hop Rising.
Sweet. I love that stuff. So this is a really good beer, well, and I like that one. So if you answer 2 or more questions, then I think the answer is, yeah, FreeIPA is for you. How many of you guys answered yes to more than 2? Yeah, okay. So start implementing this tomorrow, right? Get your boss on board and all sorts of fun things like that. So let's talk about what we can do with FreeIPA. I'm thinking my demo is going to be really short, but maybe not. I can do a 3rd demo, hopefully. So first off, let me talk about what I'm going to be using. So I've got CentOS as my server. So I use that as my FreeIPA server. I've already pre-installed it, but I haven't done some configuration on it that we're going to do. So you guys can see some of the configuration that happens. I'm using KVM and libvirt. I really tried hard for about a week to try to get Docker to work. And if anybody can get Docker working with FreeIPA, I will buy you an IPA. Okay, so, or 2, because it's that hard. Docker has some limitations, specifically with dbus and systemd on Fedora, and with SSSD and dbus and device manager and 6 other things on CentOS and RHEL. So there's some issues with Docker in terms of that. But Docker is flexible, and it probably will work in a year. And lastly, all my clients are going to be Fedora, but if you wanted to run this on Ubuntu, if you wanted to run this on Arch, or if you wanted to run it on some random Windows server, all of those things should work. And they should just authenticate directly. So you shouldn't have any problems with operating systems connecting as long as they can do those things like Kerberos and LDAP and SSL. So those should be pretty basic, right? So let's do our first demo. We're going to configure our first FreeIPA client. And again, this is another one that I really like, the Lagunitas IPA. It's from San Francisco, Petaluma to be exact. I had it at PyCon last year. It's really good. Oh, we'll talk in a minute. Just be patient. I have a plan here. So I'm going to show you the demo first. So what I'm using right here, I'm actually going to show you. Can you guys all see that? Maybe bigger? All right, hold on. Let me change the to white. Let's see. Is that better? Turn off all the lights. Yeah, we can go. We can have a nap. Okay. So big enough for everybody? Okay. So I'm using a tool called Play It Again Sam, which I'll explain later on. Basically, it just replays my tools for me. So I don't have to actually configure anything, and I don't make mistakes. So Play It Again Sam allows me just to hit the space bar, and I can SSH into my server. Right? So I'm SSHing into this server called client, which I told you is our client, right? So it lets me SSH in, or maybe it doesn't. There it goes. Oh, awesome. Just a second, I forgot to do one more thing. I have to change the servers because they always change on me. Yep. That's okay. And by the way, I'm using IPA as my name server, so that's the IPA server. So hopefully this will work now. So let me go ahead and exit out and try that again. All right. Yeah, it's going to be fail. Yeah, I didn't need to guys show you guys all my secrets, but okay. So then let's run that again, and then I got to move that file. Okay, so we'll try that again. Sorry about that. Okay, this should work this time. So I'm just going to hit the space bar, and it should play the commands for me. And if it works, then it'll be happy. Come on. Really? This is not fun. See, this is why I don't do things last minute normally. Oops. That was good. Don't look at me. It's a simple fix, I think. Yeah. Oh, maybe I don't have it running. No, it's running. Yeah, 100 is the IPA server.
Is it?
Let's try that and see if it works. Go away. Okay, that's a promising sign. Right, so that's actually correct. So what I need to do first is I need to actually go onto my FreeIPA server. So let's do that. Let me kill this one more time. And then we'll do the test. And I apologize for the... It's a new presentation, so... Okay. Hey, you. Go there. Okay. So let's go to the browser and have a look at FreeIPA for a minute. So here's our identity management system that we've set up. So I actually preset this up, like I said. This is at 192.168.122.100, running on just the standard NAT that I have there. And it's called ipa.example.com. And I should be authenticated to it. Let's find out if I still am. So I can go in here and I can look around. So for instance, I've got an admin user, and I want to add one. So let's add an user, which is Herlo, right? That'd be me. And I could type. And I just use the simple things. Now there's some options at the bottom here, like I can add and edit, or I can add and then add another, or I can just add. Now I want to add and edit because I actually want to set a couple things. You'll notice right here, just straight off, I've got a group, I've got some roles, I've got HBAC rules, and I've got some Sudo rules. And we're going to change the Sudo rules later. Up here at the top, you can see identity policy, and then auditing is in that part, even though it says IPA server. And then down here, I've got my UID, my login shell, and a few other things. For instance, I'm going to change my login shell to bin bash for a specific reason. Hopefully you'll all see why in a minute. And then you'll notice I also can set my SSH keys. So right here I can set an SSH key. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just make it easy to authenticate myself right to the client server. And I'm going to do that. Why did it? Did I grab the wrong plate again? I think that's what I did wrong. That's interesting. Okay, so that's what I did play, I think, before. All right. Well, we'll go onto the server and just connect and configure it first. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Set to 110. So this server is 110, so we're going to SSH into this box, and we're going to make it a client of this server. So currently I can't log in. I don't have... there's no user, Herlo. Well, I guess there is, but it doesn't really work yet. I don't know why it's on there. But so that user doesn't really exist. So we're going to go ahead and actually make sure that this server actually is enrolled. So we're going to do an IPA, FreeIPA client. This is what it should have done earlier. Yeah. So it'll do an install for me really quick and install my FreeIPA client. It may already be installed. I don't remember. So we'll find out. I ran through this like an hour ago, so I'm confused why it's not working. Okay, cool. So it's already installed. And it probably already did the FreeIPA client configuration too, but nope. So we'll run that part.
Whereabouts is this stuff installed? Which repository is it?
So it's just in Fedora's default repository. Yep.
Okay.
If you do a yum list free IPA star, it's in updates. Okay. And in CentOS, it's in the same one. It's in their CentOS repository. It's just the core repository. Yeah, and in RHEL, it's also in the core. It's just built in. You just get it.
IPA client, they don't have the free.
Right, so IPA client is the command line, but FreeIPA client is, so it depends on what you're on. If you're on Fedora, it's, right, correct. That's what I was getting at. So in Fedora, it's FreeIPA-client. In RHEL and CentOS, it's just IPA-client. I don't know why they have to rename it.
What's FreeIPA Python again?
It's an Python API for FreeIPA, which is pretty cool. I haven't played with it a lot, but I plan to in the near future. So there's that. So let's see if we got this installed as a client. So I'm just going to make a home directory, make sure that the home directory actually exists. This is telling the IPA server that I want to install this server against FreeIPA server, and I want to use it as an authentication component now. So what it should do, yeah, see, it's already configured on this system. That's what I thought. What it should do is actually go through, and let me see if I can find the right one. I apologize, you guys, because that is really strange. Because I spent like a whole bunch of time making these work.
All those interactions.
Yeah, right. This was done like 2 days ago. So, PIAS.
Did you sacrifice the wrong color rubber chicken?
It's possible. Let's see if it works this time. Okay, so let me create the Herlo user and put the key in there. So, let's do that. SSH add -L. So how many of you guys have keys? Lots and lots of SSH keys, right? Yeah, there they are. I manage a billion of them. So let's go ahead and just grab one. Doesn't really matter which one. And put it in the key here and set that value. So now if I go back here, you can see that it's in there. And then I just click the little update button right here, and that now should give me the ability to SSH in. So we'll try that again one more time. Oh, but I don't have a password set because I forgot what it was. So we'll try something else here. Oh, look. See, there's the SSH. See, this is the right one. Okay, I feel better now. So I'm going to go ahead and log in again, and we'll just show you how it actually works now. So I type in the password. I do a yum install FreeIPA client. See, I should have just trusted myself, but no. So it went through and installed all the stuff. And then it does the make home dir stuff that I showed you earlier. Now this time it'll actually show you the true values. So yeah, I want to configure this server. Oh yeah, I have to do it one more time. There. So I type yes this time. And yep, who's authenticated? I have one admin user. I can make other users admins if I want. I'll show you the admin user later. When I do that, it asks me for my password. And it synchronizes time with our Kerberos domain controller, so our KDC. So you can actually do that as well. And what that's doing is setting up NTP and interacting NTP directly with it as well. So now I've enrolled, and now I have authentication and the ability to SSH into that box. Okay?
On the make home directory, can you have it specify where it makes that home directory?
You can, and you do that here, though, where the home directory would be right here. Okay. If you want something like AutoFS mounts with NFS, things like that, you can do that as well. I'm not going to show that, of course, but you can. So if you want like a centralized home directory and then just mount it, it does work. So I'm going to restart SSSD. SSSD is a caching mechanism, basically, that allows you to authenticate to the server once. It'll query the LDAP server, get your authentication, make sure you're authorized. Once it logs you in, then it will actually cache that locally for a period of time. You can configure that time. I don't remember what the default is offhand either. I apologize that they're at the bottom. So,
can you have it set for no caching?
Yeah, you can. So I log out of the box, and now I hit sshclient.example.com. This time, when I type yes, it logs me directly in. There it goes. Now, what you'll notice is there was one failed attempt, right? So that first time I tried to log in, it failed, and that didn't work. So there you go. So I can see that I've got my ID, my password, or my working directory, excuse me, and that I'm on client.example.com and not just sitting on some random box. And I just logged in, and what it did do also is it created my home directory for me, creating home directory for Herlo. Automatically did that. So I didn't have to do anything specific. So that's the end of that little demo, and that should just work. Make sense? Okay. So I'm glad I went back to try it again because I thought I was failing, but nope. All right, so our next demo, let's see if I can do that one. Any questions after that before we go any further?
I don't know, you may get to it. Can you go over user groups real quick?
I'm not going to cover it, but we can talk at the end if you like.
Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not too hard to do at all. If you want to add users to groups, that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, so I can say, hey, these groups do Sudo, these groups can.
Yeah, we're going to do Sudo in a minute. So Sudo we're going to do, and I'll show you how that works, and you can kind of see maybe where that information is. Turns out that that's the next demo. So we're going to do a centralized Sudo. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to run a script that is going to run on the command line and run the same commands as if we were doing it on the web page. So let me show you the web page first, right here. If you look under policy in the tabs, there's a Sudo section. Now there's also automount, password, Kerberos tickets, a whole bunch of other things, SE Linux too. If you're interested in any of those, you can dig in onto them and learn them. They're not that hard. But we're interested in Sudo, so we could add a rule here and go through the process of adding one. But if instead of doing that, we can also do it on the command line. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run one on the command line here. Hopefully this is this one. So we're going to run that one. Oops. What happened to it? Good enough. So we're going to do sudo server. Okay. So we run this one, and it's going to log us into the IPA server this time. We log into that IPA server. We become root. And we're immediately going to add a sudo rule. This is what they look like. So first I'm going to say sudo rule add. And I'm going to say what the name of the rule is, and then I'm going to tell you what host category, what command category, what run as user, or user and, run as user category and run as group. You're kind of asking these questions earlier, right? So we can choose how we want to run a sudo rule. This is the most simple rule, right? This is sudo all, right? If you do vi sudo. So this is the simplest rule you can run. I haven't gotten any extra rules to give you, but you can see right here that it's actually pretty easy to create rules. Now I just create that rule, and it says here it is. It displays it to me. Now I can also do some display with IPA sudo rule show, I think. And there's a bunch of other ones. I'll show you that in just a minute. So pretty cool, right? So then I can go ahead and add a user to that. So the Herlo user now can do this sudo rule as soon as I hit enter. And that sudo rule now exists on the server. I'm going to lie to you and tell you that it does exist, but it really didn't, only because I'm doing a demo, right? So the demos will show you that you can do this, but
I'm assuming there's also sudo rule add group.
Let me show you. So let me go back into that box. So you asked, you can always do this with any of the help on IPA. So you can ask IPA help, and it'll just give you a ton of categories. And then for any of those categories, you can say IPA help sudo. And so this one you were asking about sudo rule. So here's all the options for sudo rule. What was the one you were specifically after? Group?
Add groups.
So yeah, there's run as group, there's group, there's also, you can add groups. I don't think it's in this one. Let's add user, sudo rule. So there might be in the other ones. There's the other sudo ones I don't know offhand, top of my head. Yeah, so there's sudo command group. I think that might be it. Yeah, so sudo command group is the one you're probably after.
Okay. It looks like the add user also could work for the group.
Yeah, and there's options for things like that. So, was it like that? Yeah, so you can see, yeah, you're right, for groups. It says right there. So who wants to have that rule? And you can set up a ton of rules, and then you can apply them to a set of groups. You can have management for users who are in certain groups. And this all ties in together really well, right? That make sense to everybody? Cool. I forgot to mention my beer, so let's do that. Because after I really need to drink a beer soon. So Stone IPA is pretty cool. I like this one. I forget. Oh, San Diego. Yeah, that's right. I forget where I got that one first, but I really like this one as well. If you're into IPAs, this is a nice one to try. Most of the ones I've done are like on the West Coast, but oops, that didn't work. Oh, no, it did. Yeah, that was it. So that was it. That was the demos, and everything's great, right? So what else you guys want to know? Yeah.
When you did the initial install, you didn't specify any server names or anything like that.
Right. Do you want to see how that works?
Yes.
Okay. I have actually one more demo that I didn't show because, well, I don't know if it'll work. Why do I do that? And so we want to do the SSH server one. So this is actually setting up the server. And yeah, so it's important that you know how the server's set up so you can see how the client's set up. I knew what you were getting at, so let me show you because this is actually a long process. I don't care about that. Okay, so I SSH into IPAexample.com. Move on. Yeah. Okay, so that's not the right demo. That would be why. Oh, that was the SSH server one. The one I want is server only. There we go. Okay. So because I have some really weird rules, I set those things up every time. But so here we go. So I'm going to install the IPA server, and I'm also going to install bind LDAP, the dynamic DB for LDAP. So it actually uses LDAP to do DNS lookups. So if that's not clear. And that's actually how it gets that information for all the valid data. So now it's installed. I then run a setup DNS command. I say yes to that. Say enter, enter, enter. You can fill it in with whatever you want, but those are the host name, the realm, and the domain. So in whatever order, I got them wrong, of course. You specify a directory manager, and you specify an IPA admin, and there you set their passwords. Mine happen to be manager 72 and IPA admin 72 because it's a great year. So do you want to configure as DNS forwarders? Yes, you can. So you can configure so I can have it go out to Google and query things beyond just my local DNS if I want. So here's, I can't remember if that's L3 or whatnot. There's the Google one. I need to reverse DNS, which I have, and I can configure the system. So then it'll go through and it'll actually set up Kerberos, LDAP, DNS, all sorts of things for you, and restart the server. And now it works. Now your question was, how does it know which one to look at, right? Well, if I hadn't done all that information and set the DNS server on my local box or on my client system, when I set it up, I have to actually tell it to look at the DNS server, and that is it. As long as it knows how to get the host name, it can look the rest of the information up based on the domain name, and it does it using SRV records. And I was going to get to that just now. So that's part of why I said you have to watch the rest of it, because so you can go into DNS, and inside the DNS, for example.com, are your SRV records. If I could make it go bigger, I would. So there's your SRV records for every one of those components that you're asking about. And that's how it does the lookup. But if I don't show you the server setup, it doesn't explain the DNS part, and this is how that gets set up. So SRV records are really important, and the TXT records are also really important here. So that's not what I want to do. So if you have questions or you're interested in any of this, this is my information. You can contact me at any of these locations. I know it's 35 minutes in, but I was able to show you pretty much some really good demos, I hope. And everybody learned something about FreeIPA and how easy it is to set up. And you'll stop using AD, right? Or hopefully you can convince your boss. The scripts and slides I did and put on my GitHub. So if you're interested in any of them. The Play It Again Sam slides or stuff actually plays also. You can get Play It Again Sam from that GitHub location. And my slides themselves are done by Inkscape and Sozi. So it's kind of a cool little thing. You just build an Inkscape SVG and you tag it and it spins around and does all magic things. I learned about that at PyCon as well this last year. The last thing I'm going to say is at 7 o'clock tonight, I didn't really put down, between 7 and 7:30 tonight, I'm going to be drinking a beer. At least one IPA, and if you'd like to join me, I'm going to be at Iggy's and Sandy. If you don't know where that is, there's a Google Map link right there. It's also on my GitHub, so any way you want to get there, come hang out, drink a beer. Me and my girlfriend, these guys probably be hanging out with me. They're giving me a ride, so yeah. So come have a beer with me. It'd be fun to have you guys there, and thank you very much. Any other questions? Sure.
Oh, sorry, you can ask a question.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering, because, so you've got a company, large company, we have obviously massive AD infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to get our Unix boxes using IPA and obviously not put people's nose out of joint because it's a Microsoft.
Right, right.
Desktop.
So essentially what you can do is you can set up IPA as a synchronizing with AD, and then you can start using your Unix boxes against IPA. You can do management in either, and it should synchronize across. Replication is actually pretty cool, and I've done replication with 4 boxes now, but we don't use Active Directory at the Linux Foundation, so I don't know how that works exactly.
One thing to note that is if you do have the Active Directory domain controller, it runs DNS, and it'll put its own Kerberos and LDAP
right.
server
Correct.
records in there, and so it kind of messes up the automation of the clients.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to have your own domain to put the
and that could work. I've seen the whole thing about syncing it from AD into IPA, and it works. I've demoed it, but I've never actually set it up in real life. So I don't have an Active Directory server, so I just pretended with a Samba Win server that just kind of works like AD, but doesn't really. And then I want to get an Active Directory server, but where do I work? Oh yeah, we don't run Windows there. So. And they refuse, which is kind of a good thing, at least in my opinion. So hopefully that answers your question. But there's really, really good docs on freeipa.org on how to do this because they just released it in 3.0, I think. And 3.1 is what's out now.
On where I work at is similar. I guess what they're more interested in is like having the users suspended for a time, and we can reactivate them at any point. And so we don't delete the user or their home directories.
Right.
They're just not able to log in.
And we can totally do that. So for instance, this is kind of what you're getting at. It's like I can say this user, and I can do a particular action on them. Oops, disable right there. Yeah, I knew it was there somewhere. I know. I'm not going to hit OK. Well, who cares? This is my test server, right? But in real life, you wouldn't do that, of course. I would disable Herlo. I have another user named Art that I can set up here and show you another demo with Art not being able to sudo certain things.
And that links with enable disable on Active Directory.
Correct. They synchronize with each other. So it's like anything else within replication. You have to actually have them set up to talk to each other. And as soon as they start talking, they talk the same language and it works. It's the protocol is very similar.
Something similar, just all manually with SSD.
Yeah, SSSD. I didn't show you guys the configs for that.
And it was, even though the users were disabled, it was still allowing.
Yeah, so let's show this demo with Sudo because I didn't actually do this part yet. I think this is the one. Yeah, so this is without Sudo rules, right? So I'm not allowed, and I don't have anything in there. So now I'm going to SSH as Art, and before I do that, let me add Art to this. So let me add the user Art. Let me uncheck that box. So Art is Art Mueller. Somebody got my joke. So I'm going to go ahead and give him same thing as I did before and I'm just going to grab a key off my server so I can SSH in because I don't really care about which one it is. I'll just use this Goose one here. And then I'll update this record, and we should be good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go over the policy, and I'm going to set up Sudo rules, right? I talked about how we did this. But instead of doing it there, I showed you how the Sudo rules work, right? And so if I continue on the way, oops, wrong screen. I can now SSH in as Art. I can also Sudo as him. And because I just created him, if it works. Oh, I typed it wrong that time. It requires me to change the password too. I didn't show this before, but this is something you can do. When you reset their password or you set them up initially, they have to reset it. So it's a really good requirement.
Do you also
for, like-
integrate like password expiring?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things in there about doing all that. Yep. I can show you more in just a sec, too. I can tell you're very interested, and it's good. So get all those in there. So he's also not in the Sudo rules. So I'm going to go into root, and I'm going to set up a client to become a Sudo client. So I'm going to edit etsy SSSD, sssd.conf. It's like the most convoluted path. And I'm just going to add a few things. Now, I already did this, so I'm not going to change it. But you add Sudo here in services. Okay. You add that section up above. See what it does here. So it highlights that. So that's the first thing it adds, is that LDAP rule. And these are some things that they give you in the documentation, so you can just find it. And then all of these section gets added to right there. So Sudo provider, LDAP URI, user base, and the mechanism that you're using. So we're using Kerberos, actually, GSS API. And then finally, that's it, I think. Oh, yeah, and then I hit enter. So those are the things I do in SSSD. And then in NS Switch, I add just that one line right there. The sudoers, files, and then SSSS. So it'll use the local files first, and then it'll use my SSSD server. And that's pretty much all there is to it. And then we will go ahead and restart that. And I think I had to reboot the box. And then I just SSH back in as Herlo, because we have those rules we set up, right? From previous conversation. And I now can log in with the all rule. Remember how earlier I showed you the all rule we set up? This is the finale of it. I forgot to actually finish it, but because it's, like I said, new presentation, so I kind of got scattered a little bit. Sorry about that. But see how I sudo -i, and now I can log in, and it's using SSS to do it with a FreeIPA. Pretty slick, eh? Cool. Any other questions you guys want to ask? Oh, and we'll show Art because, well, Art doesn't work, right? He puts his password in, and he's still not allowed. So it's important to note that I only gave the rules to Herlo. I didn't give them to Art. And now Art can't log in and do anything either still. He can't sudo anywhere. So if you tried sudo, fdisk or sudo dd, he would be denied. But you can limit it down to those sorts of things. So, yeah.
I don't think you touched on this, but they also have host-based access control.
Right. I did kind of touch on it, but I kind of skimmed over it. So in sudo rules, you can say, let's just add one here.
They have access control in that you can limit users to certain hosts.
Right, so that's what I was getting to.
Not necessarily the sudo.
Right, but yeah, and you can do it in lots of ways. Like HBAC is totally different than sudo, so you've got that flexibility. But in HBAC, you also have the ability to say which hosts and groups that you're managing. So you've got both. And you're right, you can do HBAC, and it just works also. So if you know how to do that and set it up.
That relies on the SSSD client to work.
Right, and in RHEL 6 and in CentOS 6 and all the newer kernels, it works pretty well.
So if that's empty and you have that selected, they can't log in anywhere?
No, this is just a rule. I have to assign it to an individual first.
Oh, okay.
So once this rule is created, then I would go to the user side and assign it. Much like I did in the demo with CLI, I said, here's that rule, and then here's Herlo's assigned to the all rule, right? Anybody else lost? Confused? Making sense? You guys like FreeIPA? It's pretty freaking awesome, isn't it? In fact, I'd say it's fucking awesome. So. Oh wait, I'm in Orem. Dang it! I'm in Utah County. I forgot. Damn it to hell! Oh, I mean, sorry. Yes, I can call your bishop and tell him I swore in front of you, and you'll have to do 4 Hail Marys. Oh wait, that's not what you guys do. You drink Coke instead. Just kidding. Yeah, right. So anyway, any other questions? I hope they didn't insult anybody. I was just being silly. Okay, yeah. A nice shirt, by the way. As long as it can talk LDAP and do authentication, it should work. There is an exact example of, like in Ubuntu, for instance, of how to configure it on Linux, and there's, I think, one for Windows. I don't know about the Mac one offhand, but I know it.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
client to multi-platform.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the server is only
Well, server can communicate multi-platform too, right? But it is a Linux box.
right,
Yeah.
multi-Linux.
Right. And I have we at the Linux Foundation we have 5 replications. We don't have any Active Directory servers, but we do have a couple Mac systems that we have to use. We're not integrating it with IPA at all now, but it's possible that we might in the future. And it's a Unix-based system, so we're still okay with it. Maybe. Any other questions? Well, thanks, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a good time.